JP Morgan, BlackRock, Microsoft, large companies in their own space, right? And obviously, you've been in fintech for over 10 years. What was the shift like, coming from, one of these big firms to kind of starting something from scratch? What are those kind of learnings or insights that you thought, okay, this is a gap here. I should probably explore this or scratch this a little bit more?
Knowledge that I acquired that our industry has so many incredible tools, but we don't really have data about our clients. How do we fix that problem? How do we fill the gap of data? And how do we incentivize clients to want to create and share data because they get more value from the industry as they do that?
How fragmented this industry is, even within an RIA, the different sources of truth with respect to data just makes it even more complicated. The good thing with AI is that it can help you organize some of the data, but then also if you have good data, it can do magic with that data as well.
Our large financial advisor customers, they recognize, You're right, we don't have good data. And the data we have is not special. If the only data you have is a client's holdings and their accounts and their transactions, and you feed that into AI, I hate to tell you this, the client can do that just as easily. You have not done anything differentiated that they can't do. The future of AI and good AI for the financial industry is going to be rooted in very high quality, differentiated, verified, trust-based data.
Hey Marla, welcome to Advisor Ally. How are you doing?
Excellent, Vineet. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Is it bright and sunny in California like it always is? What's the weather like today?
Very nice day. We're in San Francisco. It's a little bubble that stays quite mild the entire year.
Right. San Francisco is very close to my heart. My daughter was born there. So, it's a place that's very special for me and my family. And you're right. I think it's the weather is one of those things that kind of stays constant in San Francisco compared to other parts of the world. But weather is not why we're here today. There's a lot of other interesting things that we'd like to talk about with you, Marla. And just a little bit about Advisor Ally. We started this a few months back, and largely I've had advisors on the show. And one thing that's I've found very interesting in speaking to different advisors is how they all have different ways into the industry. Not everyone started off as an advisor. Someone was a pharmacist, someone was an engineer, someone was, in music, and then they found their calling in advisory. With you, I have a slightly different version of that because you started in advisory, right? And in some ways, and then obviously you've got a very exciting journey, tech, big tech, fintech. But tell us a little bit about it. I mean, always good to know what the backstory is before we get into the present.
Sure. It wasn't my first role out of college. After college, I worked in nonprofit a bit, and I was in Manhattan and worked on Wall Street a little bit, actually in a coding job. I ran SQL queries. And then I was getting my MBA full-time in the evenings, and I did become a licensed financial advisor at a private bank in New York. And I was an advisor really until 2006 when I moved over to JP Morgan, and I was responsible for custody operations for asset managers. So I went even deeper into investment operations, and for the next over a decade, got very educated about how investing works at the largest institutions on our planet. And so I spent 6 years at JP Morgan, about 5 years at BlackRock, very focused on the operational ecosystem that holds up the investment industry. A slightly different part of the supply chain than wealth management and private banking. And a decade ago, in 2015, I decided to move into fintech. So I've been in fintech and run partnerships at several different companies. All of the companies had some aspect of democratizing access and improving experiences and making financial services better in a meaningful way. Spent also 2 years almost at Microsoft, looking at what is the power of tech, what can tech actually do. And now I'm the founder of Knowmee, very much rooted in this knowledge that I acquired that our industry has so many incredible tools, but we don't really have data about our clients. How do we fix that problem? How do we fill the gap of data? And how do we incentivize clients to want to create and share data because they get more value from the industry as they do that? So that's kind of the origin story of Knowmee.
Understood. And very exciting, I think. And, you and I have something in common. I started my career as a coder too. I used to deal with SQL queries too. I used to work for Oracle first couple of years of my life. So that's an interesting thread there. No, so Marla, JP Morgan, BlackRock, Microsoft, large companies in their own space, right? And obviously you've been in fintech for over 10 years. What was the shift like? I actually, two questions. What was the shift like, coming from, one of these big firms to kind of starting something from scratch with Knowmee? And I know you talked about this a little bit about data and so on and so forth, but what kind of led you to it? What are those kind of learnings or insights that you thought, okay, this is a gap here. I should probably explore this or scratch this a little bit more?
So, how has it been? It's been very challenging leaving large companies and like having a very, I'm very fortunate. I've been very blessed in the career I've had and in the opportunities I've been given and achieved and worked up to. Maybe there's a little bit of irrationality in the decision to go and become a founder after that and start from zero again. It's not from zero though. It's with a network and it's with so much knowledge. So that goes into maybe your second part of your question, which was like, what were the things that really led me to Knowmee and the gaps? I think first off, if you think about what I was doing in private banking, it's really understanding each individual private client extremely deeply. You get involved with their family, their business. It's not just money, it's understanding what do they want out of their money. And then I got into this different area of the supply chain and asset management and became very familiar with what goes into manufacturing products. When we build something, let's say we build a new ESG fund, how much do we actually know about what our clients believe about the environment? What do they want their money to help them do? And I think over time, I realized we don't know. We don't actually know how big is a market that cares about X versus Y. And we don't have a way to understand how should we distribute product all the way down the supply chain to the individual, whether it is through a financial advisor or a pension fund or a 401k, account, or whether they are participants in a sovereign wealth fund into the government and what that person might want. There's so many different vehicles for investment. And at the end of the day, there's humans. And there was this just huge lack of understanding of the humans. And we were doing so much guessing and thinking about how to generate alpha. And we kind of define alpha as beating a benchmark. But we don't actually pause and stop and think, wait a second, what is this benchmark actually measuring? And do I actually care? And what do I care about? And if I was going to construct my own benchmark, this is another theme that led me to Knowmee, is this concept of direct indexing. And so that would be like, what would be the benchmark of Marla? Or Vineet, what is Vineet's benchmark? And how do I kind of directly index to things that you do care about? And it might be a variation of a popular index, S&P 500 or whatever it might be, with some tweaks here and there to make it personalized to you. Or you might construct it based off of what kind of things interest you and where you want your money to go. Excellent. The technology exists. The knowledge of Vineet does not. And so that was really kind of what led me to say, look, I think the industry is going in this direction. There are a lot of advisors who have woken up to, I need to personalize what I'm offering. I need to differentiate my business, especially during the rise of AI. I need to be way better than what an AI, that somebody can get for free is telling them about their money. And I need to know much more about how to contextualize information. That's a high bar for advisors. If they're going to beat the personalization that an AI can deliver their client after that AI has been trained day in, day out for months, they need to know a lot more about their client. So that's what led me to launch Knowmee.
No, very powerful, Marla. And I think you touched a few different threads there. I think, obviously, I think there's been an evolution in the engagement. I mean, maybe 20, 40 years back, you had brokers and they had stock tips. And that's kind of how people used to invest. So it's become a lot more sophisticated now. But even along that, I think evolution of the sophistication, I think to your point, there were a lot of assumptions. And I think people, in terms of client cohorts or archetypes and so on and so forth, and I think maybe some of those assumptions were assumed also to be informed assumptions, but perhaps not so. And I really I know you brought up AI, but even before AI, there's like 30,000 RIAs in the industry, right? How do you differentiate yourself? People who can really do well, of course, is besides giving good advice, is being able to understand your clients and giving them what they need. So makes total sense. So I think it's the perfect segue. I think let's get into Knowmee. So tell us a little bit more. Let's peel the onion. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what Knowmee is about.
Sure. So Knowmee is purely a data discovery software platform. We have our B2B software. Advisors use Knowmee with their clients. They introduce Knowmee simply through a URL. We give them a custom URL. Their client logs in and they experience a fun, gamified wellness app that feels familiar. It feels like other wellness apps. And it carries them through a journey of self-discovery, really understanding what are my values? What are my goals? How do I envision the future? Who do I share my money with? What life events are coming up for me? What do I need to know about myself so I can get more value out of this relationship I have with my wealth manager? And then they are able to share. We defaulted to sharing that information with their advisor. They can turn it off if they like. We're building trust here. We're not looking to scrape data about them. So on the advisor end, the advisor can use Knowmee really easily. It is as simple as if you have a CRM system or a planning platform in which you want to bring Knowmee data, you can. You don't have to use our dashboard. We're just giving you data. We just want you to be able to pull in the data where you want it and use it where it's most effective and alert you to new data, alert you to new information that's coming in from that client that is going to be really relevant to you. So we don't just give you the raw data, we also give AI insights. And so the AI insights give you conversation starters. Here is exactly what this client wants to hear from you. And it synthesizes everything that Knowmee has gathered from them in this personalized wellness journey that the client goes through. It also tells them, here's what these clients' values are, their goals. This is the language of their motivators and what's going to get them to take action. These are some sensitive topics that you should be aware of and how you should approach some of those. What we don't do is threaten the advisor. We believe that wealth management and human advisors have a very significant role. We are enriching the advisor by gathering information that today is not being gathered, or it's being gathered inconsistently, or the advisors, it depends on the mood of the advisor and the client and what comes up in conversation. There's a lot of AI chatbots that are AI tools that listen in on meetings, but you don't always cover the right content in every meeting. We're making sure you're getting the right content, and it's very rooted in behavioral science. So I should mention that. We have done a tremendous amount of research in academia for years about how to get your client to open up. And that is the framework for all of the adventures in Knowmee, so that they can bite by bite, really start to understand themselves and then create much deeper connections with their advisors.
Interesting. I think talking about your rooted in academia, I think you have a team and individual as well, right, who's studied this at length. So that expertise, it's rooted in very much in science. And I'm sure there's been several iterations of this, like any other product. But one question I did have, Marla, was, there are maybe not a direct parallel. I mean, not at all a direct parallel, but like to draw an analogy, people use risk scores, right? Try and understand what is the risk threshold of a client and then propose solutions accordingly. But risk scores are static, point in time. Risk thresholds can change every day based on what's happening on TV, even especially these days with the way markets move. But what the data you're talking about is way more detailed and it's also dynamic. Is that fair?
Correct. And I would say the challenge with risk, you hit the nail on the head. They are static. They are largely inaccurate because they don't take into account so many other factors. And they're also very poorly written. Most risk tolerance questionnaires are very hard for a client to answer. And so they're doing their best, but they're not understanding the questions. They don't know what to write. And so they're taking their best shot. It's very hard for a human, and this is proven time and again in the science of psychology. It's very hard for a human to actually give you a correct answer of here's what I would do in this scenario. So what Knowmee looks at as we kind of think about risk, number one, it's dynamic, as you say. You've got to take measures on multiple occasions in different contexts and in different ways. It's not a boring, long question, multiple choice form that they don't get. But also those questions have to be really understandable by a human. And over time, then you get to understand their risk. And you understand a lot more about their capacity to take risk, as well as their perception, their tolerance for risk. And you learn about what did they actually do in the event of risk, not only what do they think they would do in the future.
Listen, actually, it makes me want to try the app, Marla. If you can send me a login at some point. It looks, I mean, especially when you said it's gamified and makes it look very, very interesting. One other question, maybe a slightly deviating from Knowmee per se, but you talked about how being in the industry has helped you build right network. But how has it not helped? Have you walked in with biases, perhaps? And, or anything else that you might want to?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Vineet. And absolutely, it's helped in so many positive ways. Number one, you understand context. You really, in our industry, we are conditioned. We're conditioned to think about things in a certain way. We're conditioned around risk and compliance, which is extremely important and a huge, huge differentiator between industry insiders and people that come in from the outside to build fintech apps, because we understand the complexity of the risk and compliance environment, and we understand the complexity of trying to get software deployed in a big financial institution. But your question was also, what are some of the drawbacks?
Downsides, yeah.
Yeah. And so one is, we're conditioned. We've been trained and taught, here's how things work. Coming from the industry and looking at a big gap and being a big strategic thinker and thinking, well, it doesn't have to be that way, is a very hard thing to do. It's a very high climb. My clients have been conditioned to think about things in a certain way. Disrupting that thinking is extremely challenging.
Right.
And so when I think about my coming into the industry, I see it. I look at them and I say, I know why they're so reluctant. I understand their objection. And I also it gives me a bigger challenge to figure out, how can I overcome that objection, knowing what they're up against? Because it's not just them, it's them and the complex multi-layer, ecosystem behind them. It's all of the different integrations that they have to manage and all of the different interests. And at the end of the day, Knowmee is great for a growing advisor who wants to engage the next generation, who cares about financial planning and holistic advice. Not all advisors do. Some advisors have excellent businesses that they've built. They're making a ton of money. They might have come into the business from selling insurance policies or selling mutual funds and stocks and bonds, and they're not doing planning. They're not interested in planning. They're allocators, and they're having a hard time transitioning from being allocators and talking about money all day to talking about life and talking about what your clients want. And so it is a very hard transition to understand that context really deeply and say, wait a second, guys, what if we questioned all of those initial beliefs and assumptions from the get-go?
Right. And I think in the spirit of what you just said, I think, you said I'm hoping I'm getting the dates right here, but 2006 is when you started off in advisory, or
2004.
2004. Okay. So not too wrong, but 20 years, right? How have, as an observer, obviously you've been a participant in the industry, but as an observer as well, what has changed? What are some of it could be obviously we know technology has changed, but have you seen big changes in how advisors operate or how client preferences are? Any comments on that?
My snarky, gut response to that was going to be no. But let me take a step back and say, no, there has been. And financial planning has basically come into existence over the last 20 years. There really wasn't the certification, the CFP certification, and the understanding of what financial planning is all about and the value of talking about what's the money for. And it's still early days. Still, financial plans are very rooted in Monte Carlo simulations and really measuring out, do you have enough money for these? I think I shared this with you when we met. We kind of base everything around two arbitrary numbers. And the arbitrary numbers are the age you retire and the age you die. Yep. We haven't evolved much from there, but we evolved to there. So at least now we're talking about the age you retire and the age you die. Now let's get even more detailed. And it's kind of a mind shift. So I am very excited about that. I am super excited about the fact that the industry talks a lot about the importance of diverse clients and women and next generation and digital savvy clients and embedding AI. They're not doing it yet, but they're talking about it. They know
That's the first step.
Yeah, it's a first step. They know it's important. They recognize the importance of innovating during this intergenerational transfer of wealth. The people that have the money today aren't going to have the money. In fact, a lot of them have already moved the money. And what's really interesting, and this is kind of in my peer group, I'm in my later 40s, a lot of my friends and colleagues are managing their parents' portfolios and they're not waiting for their parents to die. They're saying, my parents in their late 70s, 80s, and I hate their advisor. I'm firing them now.
Right.
And so, how are you addressing that? And before it's too late, how are you getting to know this next generation, the kids of your 80-year-old and 70-something-year-old clients? Because they are starting now. They're not waiting for the inheritance. They're managing that parent's finances. They're managing all the long-term healthcare costs. It's kind of that sandwich generation that has kids they're supporting and parents they're supporting. So they're taking the reins faster than I think a lot of the industry assumes.
Right, right. And it's actually a very interesting point you made there, because it's probably very easy to lose that relationship when it moves on to the next generation if you don't know what the next generation thinks like. And on the other hand, I was talking to another advisor who's now retired in actually the podcast. The episode will be out soon. He was talking about how he had based his practice around just managing multiple generations of the same family or household. But they knew exactly what each generation is like and what, how they had to tailor their engagement style based on what each generation needed. So I think it's a very, very important point, especially now, as you mentioned, large wealth transfer, changing client preferences, tech is making everything different. Love to hear your take on AI. I think, you mentioned it a few times. Knowmee also utilizes it. Where do you see AI kind of playing a part in the industry, in the advisory world?
I would tell all of the advisors that are curious about AI, get ready. It is going to come into so many different parts of your clients' lives. It already has. And so the most important thing that I can share about AI, it's obviously going to be related to Knowmee, and it's the reason I launched a company, is that AI is really not going to help you that much if the data feeding it is not great. And so, how are you getting the quality of data about your client to use AI better? How are you getting the type of information that is going to go into whatever model or suggestion or conversation or allocation that you want for your client if you don't have the information to feed it? And so I feel like Knowmee is at a unique point in our journey. We're still an early stage startup, but clients see that. Our customers, our large financial advisor customers, they recognize, you're right, we don't have good data. And the data we have is not special. If the only data you have is a client's holdings and their accounts and their transactions, and you feed that into AI, I hate to tell you this, the client can do that just as easily. You have not done anything differentiated that they can't do. They can very easily put in all of their accounts, all of their real estate holdings, their insurance policies, even their estate plan, and say, pretend you're a financial advisor. What would you tell me to do?
Right.
That's a huge threat. So I feel like the future of AI and good AI for the financial industry is going to be rooted in very high quality, differentiated, verified, trust-based data for the purpose of use this data to use AI as a tool to give me more value in return for the data. And there are so many ways to do that. So we've embedded AI not only for the advisor, but for the client. You've got a vision of the future. What does that vision look like? AI can help you see it. It can make it more clear. There is behavioral finance research that proves that the clearer your vision of the future, the more likely you are to achieve it. It's the same research that goes behind goals. And when you state your goals, you're more likely to achieve them. When you tell other people your goals, you're more likely to achieve them. When you create kind of that, it's also goes into spirituality and manifestation. When you spend time thinking about where you're going, you get there. And so That I think is so critically important, and using AI as a tool for that, that's beautiful. That's actually transforming our industry to be better, using AI as a tool and not using AI as a crutch. Oh, I like that. We should use that somewhere. That's a good, I should put that out a hashtag. It's a tool, not a crutch.
Every episode, I feel like I got a nice take on AI. I think last time someone said the sexy and the scary AI. And similarly, I think this one is great as well. I think some great points there. I was at a conference, one of the larger conferences last month, and data was a recurring theme there. And I think especially how fragmented this industry is, even within an RIA, the different sources of truth with respect to data just makes it even more complicated. And the good thing with AI is that it can help you organize some of the data, but then also if you have good data, it can do magic with that data as well. So I think to your point, if you use it as a tool, not a crutch, I think it can be quite an enabler. And I think the best thing about AI is also that, it's like, it's one of those technologies where like, it's not like blockchain. It's a technology that you can actually try. You can just go log in, do a search query, whatever, right? So I think that way you can become a believer fairly quickly about the power of AI.
Yeah.
I think we've spoken a lot about advisory and work. Marla, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for the insights. I like to always end with something on the lighter side. Tell us a little bit about what keeps you happy outside building and being busy. What's your poison outside being a founder?
It's so simple. It's so simple. It's my family, my kids. Like my kids are my source of joy. My little like dog. I think since becoming a founder, my career and professional, I don't know how to say this, my pace and my intensity have gone up so much that everything else has had to simplify. I've had to kind of cut out hobbies and, spending a lot more time on friends and hosting events, which I love doing in my home. We still do it, but nowhere like what we used to do. So, it's just become so much simpler. Like I love spending time with my family. I do yoga mostly because I think it just helps on so many levels. It helps like with my mental health and clarity and, avoiding the noise. So yeah, that it's very simple. It's family, it's moving, it's nature. Those are the things that kind of keep me happy.
Brilliant, brilliant. I can relate to a lot of that as well. Marla, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I know we'll talk again soon, but thanks again for joining us on Advisor Ally today.
Of course. Thank you, Vineet.